Yes. Hello, parents, brothers and sisters. Today meet me again, yes, in sharing the story for you to listen to as follows. Whisper Lake was the kind of place no one visited on purpose. The water was black and still, hidden deep in a dense forest. Some said it was cursed, others said it was simply a place forgotten by time. Yet, every few years, whispers of a ghostly bride appearing at the lake's edge would spread through the nearby town of Hollow Creek. No one knew her real story, only that she was always dripping wet, her gown heavy with water, her veil hanging like seaweed over her empty, unseeing eyes. And so, the legend of the drowned bride lived on. It all began in 1887 when a young woman named Eleanor Shaw was to be married at Whisper Lake. Her husband-to-be, Joseph Morton, was a fisherman who had promised to build her a house by the water's edge. But Joseph had secrets, dark ones that whispered and festered in his mind, secrets that gnawed at him until he could no longer bear it. The night before the wedding, Eleanor vanished. The townspeople searched the lake and the surrounding woods for days, but she was never found. Joseph, distraught and filled with guilt, disappeared shortly after. Some said he couldn't live with the shame, while others believed he had followed Eleanor into the lake's dark depths. Decades passed, but the story didn't fade. Instead, it grew, with each generation adding something new. Children dared each other to visit the lake at night, to listen for Eleanor's voice calling from the depths. Adults warned their children to stay away, though they too whispered about sightings of a wet bride in the dead of night. One crisp autumn evening, two brothers, Thomas and William, went hunting near Whisper Lake. They had always scoffed at the ghost stories, teasing the townsfolk for their superstitions. But that night, something felt different. As they trekked through the dense forest, fog began to gather around them, thickening with every step. The wind grew colder, and the lake, usually so calm, began to ripple as if disturbed by something unseen. Then they heard it, a faint, distant sobbing. They froze, exchanging glances, both wanting to turn back, yet unable to resist the lure of the mystery. Quietly, they moved closer to the lake's edge, their breath visible in the frosty air. And there she was, a woman in a sodden white dress, standing ankle-deep in the water, her back to them. Her hair hung in wet strands, clinging to her face as she tilted her head slightly, as if listening. But her eyes, wide and blank, stared off into the mist, her expression one of deep, unending sorrow. "Hello," Thomas called out, though his voice shook. The woman's head turned slowly, her gaze fixing on them. For a moment, they thought they saw something flicker in her eyes, a hint of recognition, a fleeting glimpse of a memory. Then, without a word, she waded deeper into the lake until the dark waters swallowed her whole. The brothers didn't speak of it again, yet neither returned to the woods, and each had a haunted look about him until the end of his days. Years later, Emily, a young girl who loved ghost stories, decided she would be the one to unravel the mystery of the drowned bride. She was known for her bravery and curious spirit, and while others laughed at the tale, she was drawn to it. One misty evening, with only a lantern in hand, Emily slipped away to Whisper Lake, hoping to catch a glimpse of the bride. She wandered along the shore, calling softly into the fog. "Eleanor? Is that your name? Why are you still here?" For a while, there was nothing but silence. Then from the lake, a soft, mournful tune began to play. It was a melody she had never heard before, but it pulled at her heartstrings, filling her with a sadness she couldn't explain. It was as if someone else's grief was pouring into her, mixing with her own thoughts until she could hardly tell them apart. In the darkness, Emily saw a faint figure rising from the water, gliding across the lake's surface. She was dressed in that same soaked gown, her veil trailing behind her. The figure raised a pale hand and beckoned. For a moment, Emily felt herself move forward, her feet stepping into the icy water. But then a voice, a real living voice, called her name from the forest. It was her brother, searching for her. The spell broke, and the figure on the lake dissolved into the mist, leaving only ripples in her wake. Shaken, Emily ran home, but the sound of that song lingered, haunting her dreams for years to come. As the years passed, the story of the drowned bride became more popular, and some believed it was just a tale to scare children. That is, until the day a young couple chose to have their wedding by Whisper Lake, thinking it would be romantic. The town tried to warn them, but the couple laughed off the warnings, dismissing it all as old superstition. Sim Hang, February 11, 2024, 10:58. On the day of the wedding, fog rolled in thick and fast, wrapping the lake in a shroud of white. As the ceremony began, strange things started to happen. The water, usually calm, began to churn as though something was moving beneath the surface. The wind howled, carrying with it a low, mournful wail. And then she appeared. The bride, dripping and silent, stood just beyond the edge of the lake, watching the couple with empty eyes. The groom, horrified, stumbled back, but the bride took a step forward, her gaze fixed on him. The guests screamed, fleeing into the forest, leaving only the groom and the bride alone. The groom, paralyzed with fear, watched as the ghostly bride held out a hand, her mouth opening as if to speak. In a voice like the wind through dead leaves, she whispered, "Promise me you'll never break a vow as mine was broken." With that, she sank back into the lake, leaving only her reflection rippling on the surface. To this day, no one knows what truly happened to Eleanor Shaw or why her spirit haunts the lake. Some say she's looking for her lost love. Others believe she's cursed to forever relive her wedding day. But those who visit Whisper Lake swear they can still see her, a pale bride rising from the water, her eyes filled with sorrow and longing. Some claim to hear her soft song floating on the breeze, or see her hand beckoning from the shore. And each person who leaves Whisper Lake carries a bit of her story with them, an echo of her sorrow, a memory of the drowned bride. And as the legend lives on, so too does Eleanor, forever bound to the dark, silent waters of Whisper Lake. Thus ends the tale of the drowned bride, a haunting reminder of promises broken and love lost to the depths. Those who dare to visit the lake must tread carefully, for they may find themselves forever haunted by her lonely song. Thank you for watching my video from the beginning to the end of this video. If you think this video is good for listening and entertaining, please click subscribe. Thank you one by one.